Good morning and welcome to the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. Remember the secret to success. It's to know who to blame for your failures. Now here's your host, Dave Carney.
Okay, where do we start? How many people do I get to list in what successive order? Okay.
Whatever you'd like.
Okay, my failures are many. My faults are few. No, seriously, where do we start with that shit? Do we go back to pre-womb? Did we pre-choose this? Because there's a school of thought that says every single one of us.
We pre-choosed.
Did we pre-choose? Did we pre-choose our own destiny? There is a school of thought that says that on a higher plane of existence, you actually pre-chose all of the circumstances in which you are actually relegated. I read an incredible book about that very same thing. And it's like, listen, why do people go to horror movies? Why do people go to watch comedies? Why do people watch dramas? They all want a different thing. And when we suspend disbelief for long enough, for 2 hours or for life, you know, we're seeing what we want to see.
So for life.
Well, I'm just saying, this is a whole area of suspension. Disbelief is a thing that we get to work with every single day. So what I'm thinking that I must have chosen is a film that's got a feature around skullduggery and fuckery. So I don't know. Who do we blame for this, Chad? I don't blame you. It's not your fault.
Well, your life or the choices that you have made.
Either.
That's the bottom line. My
Good
opening
morning, Jason.
Was a joke, not necessarily to take seriously.
Good morning, Jason. How you doing, Soul Surfer? Joey Miller says, morning, guys. And to everybody that's watching us, streaming live from the Trauma Center studios, coast to coast, powered by the Recovery Room. We got a lot to go down. We got a lot to talk about and go over this morning here on the program. We've got a whole big weekend of super wildcard football. What could be more important than a weekend of super wildcard football?
Nothing.
The Milwaukee Bucks lost last night to the Miami Heat. Tiny tears are falling all around the state of Wisconsin. Aaron Charles Rodgers was, if nothing, reflective in his press conference yesterday. Even gave a really good shot to a friend of the show here, Mike Clements, who is a Green Bay Packer reporter and a guy that we've talked to, Chad, here in the state of Wisconsin all the time. When asked, what will you miss if you don't come back next year? He says, well, I'm not going to miss Mike Clements' 10-second lead up to those questions. And it was just one of the most perfect responses to a reporter's question, because Mike is like what you named Bill Maher one time when you gave him his Native American spirit name, Long Walk for a Short Laugh. Or was that Uncle Gary that nicknamed him Long Walk for a Short Laugh?
That would have been Gary, not me.
That was Gary. All right. Well, that's what Mike Clements essentially was. And Aaron Rodgers yesterday, guys and gals, if you're a Green Bay Packer fan and you watch that press conference with Rodgers, that exit press conference, ooh, did that feel like the breakup talk? It was.
So he's not taking the $60 million and he's going away?
I don't think he thinks he wants. Listen, if I were reading tea leaves here, the way that Rodgers was speaking in that press conference yesterday, and the meme that I don't know if it's been made a meme yet, but Kyle Morningwood sent me this picture over in which they did deem like a new version of that show Cheaters, where LaFleur and Jordan Love are having dinner together, what looks like a Mexican restaurant, two guys at a booth. Rodgers looks like he thinks that he's going to be traded.
Oh, okay.
To me, that's the way that it read. Rodgers, the way that he was actually acting yesterday at the press conference, and for Packer fans that saw that press conference, you know, chime in here this morning on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, LinkedIn. What do you think? Because it looked to me like he thought he would be traded. He literally called out every single member of the press and said, I will miss them asking me about this. I will miss them asking me. And then he said, guys, that's it. And he walked off. This felt like the breakup talk, dude. It really did. And previous to yesterday's conversation with, again, Long Walk for a Short Question, Mike Clements and the other assembled Green Bay Packer B+ media, this felt like it was a goodbye. It really did. And this could be completely just this could be just like, he says he doesn't think that press conference was yesterday. It was after the game Sunday. Okay, well, whatever. I didn't see all that shit. I saw it yesterday then, Wood. Yeah, it felt like a breakup fucking call. That's what it felt like. This is what I was seeing yesterday. So this is making rounds yesterday. Maybe it's just me, but when you talk to every single one of the members of the media and mention what it is that they have written about you or something, it felt very much like a goodbye. So yeah, Wood, maybe that was the other day. There you go.
It doesn't really matter when it was.
Really.
The bottom line is that that's the sentiment that you picked up, was that he thought he was leaving, right? That's what I'm gathering from you. Is what you saw was that you get the feeling that he's no longer going to be in Green Bay one way or another.
Yeah, that's the way that I felt.
But you kind of feel like not that he's leaving on his own accord, that he's going to be shipped out.
Yes. So Wood, where was that and when was that picture taken? Because I'm not entirely sure that Wood doesn't have like a fucking secret bug up the butthole of Matt LaFleur or Jordan Love, because this guy's getting okay. All right. Well, there you go. Nothing to it. Nothing to see.
You never know it. That's the problem with Aaron Rodgers. He's a hard guy to read. You really can't tell. I mean, he's so passive aggressive, and he says all kinds of weird stuff, and he always has these little smirks on his face.
Yeah,
it's really hard to read that guy. I think that's part of the reason why there's people out there that don't care for him, because he's not a normal person. I mean, that's just the body. He's especially not a normal quarterback in the NFL.
Listen, and I guess this is where I would go with this. We're both introspective fellas, right? Like, so we both have that particular penchant. And so for what it's worth, I think that Aaron Rodgers is doing exactly what he probably should be doing as a person. But yeah, as a normal quarterback,
sure.
I think that we categorize sports and life differently, right? Like, we really do. You get your foot broken off of your leg, and let's say you're in a normal job, like Dak Prescott had that happen to him last year, right? Your foot gets broken off your leg in a normal job. Chad, you're walking down the stairs today, your foot gets broken off of your fucking leg in a normal job. People are horrified. There's grave levels of concern. Nobody's thinking about rushing you back to week 16. This is about like Chad, and we got to get you better. So life in sports are just different. I think that with Rodgers, and again, maybe I'm just misreading this. And again, I don't go over every single one of these press conferences. What I saw yesterday just very much felt like, when I watched it, he was saying goodbye. And maybe because this is where I saw it. I saw it on Mike Clemens' Facebook page. Maybe because I saw him give a little subtle loving dig to Mike Clemens, who really is like one of those guys you have on for 15 minutes, 3 hours later, you're wondering, where did your life go? Right? Like, it's one of those kinds of conversations. So that kind of thing, maybe it just, it just worked on me for the first time.
It could be. Well, there's some people out there, like whoever this Facebook user is, that's pretty much done with Aaron Rodgers. I think that there's more than you think there are out there that think the same way. At this point, it's like, okay, let's move on.
Well, listen, the same exact thing happened with Rodgers as did with Brett Favre. As a matter of fact, there was something going back and forth on a group text the other day between me and a couple of fellas, Joe DeGuano, I think Kyle Wood was on it. And it was about the last number of passes from Favre and the last number of passes from Rodgers.
Yeah.
When we go to a commercial break, which we're going to do here real quick to say what's up to a couple of our great supporters, I'm going to see if I can find that thing, because the stats for the last couple of passes, the last couple of games or whatever it was, I'm going to check on here. It was interesting. So stay tuned. By the way, good poll question up on our Twitter feed at the Sports Carney, as well as the Facebook group page. Well over 300 members now. Which NFC Super Wildcard game are you most excited about this weekend? We've got 3 big matchups in the NFC. So go to at the Sports Carney on Twitter, or of course our Facebook group page. We'll be back in 60. What can I say? The Recovery Room on 7th and Mississippi Street is not only my favorite bar in all of downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin, it's my favorite restaurant in all of downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin. Breakfast served 8 to noon, Saturday and Sundays, daily specials, incredible cocktails, and the best damn wait staff in the entire city. My buddy Matt knows how to treat you right, and that's why when you go to the Recovery Room on 7th and Mississippi, you're always going to have a great time and a great meal with a great cocktail. So if you haven't been in a while, or perhaps you're just regular and you want to stop in again, make it a thing. I'm there every single week. How about you?
Hey, it's time for koozies, hot tubs, and jacuzzis. With a big announcement for the next 2 months. When you buy a hot tub or jacuzzi, you get a pair of tickets for the Big Koozes Booze Cruise. Headed to Cabo. So sop that mop and then come pop a top with me, the Coos.
Sop that mop is a slang term for wet bush.
Broadcasting live from the Trauma Center Studios, this is the Sports Carnival. With this reminder, everything is edible. Some things are only edible once, which is so true. Here's your host, Dave Carney.
All right. Well, I started off this show with a real bang. I'll leave that one right where it is. Welcome back. Thanks to our friends at One Trust Real Estate, Kyle Cable, Preferred Insurance, Tony Rousa, Brian Sandmeyer, and the Midwest Mortgage Team for helping make this Sports Carnival go. Sean O'Neill is the official attorney of the program. The O'Neill Law Firm handles your family, your bankruptcy cases, and, of course, Joe Sampson's Helping Hands Landscaping. There for your snow removal, your lawn care in the summertime. And by the way, happy birthday. Yesterday was Joe's birthday. We totally missed that one.
Oh.
I didn't see it until afterwards. So I apologize, Joe. He doesn't care.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. He's a grown-up. He doesn't need to, necessarily hear it, but happy birthday anyways. Isn't it stupid how, like, on sports shows and stuff, we'll do, like, these hour-long birthday salutes to people who are, like, 26 years old or 27 years old, like, oh, it's Giannis's birthday today, or it's Aaron's. Who fucking cares? Like, what are we talking about that for? Isn't that so odd?
It is a little silly, but there's also this new thing called birthday weeks.
Oh, fuck. What?
Where you have to celebrate the whole week.
What?
It's one day. Get over yourself, okay?
I
Get
think
some presents and some cake and shut the fuck up.
Okay, hold on a second. Dun, 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 dun. Jehovah's Eyewitness News. I don't care. Who cares if we celebrate this stuff? What are we doing with all this shit? By the way, just so you know, this is all a ploy from Hallmark to get your money. That's all this is. They'll create more and more holidays. Give them time. They're just going to keep it coming, rolling down the hill. Pretty soon it's going to be my favorite stat day, which, if I can steal directly from Dan Patrick and the Danettes, stat of the day, bop, bop, stat of the day. Check this out, Chad. This does come from Kyle Morningwood, and this was shared between myself, Kyle Wood, and our Green and Gold insider, Joe DeGuano. In Brett Favre's final 6 passes as a Packer, he went 2 for 6 with 12 yards, concluding in a game ceiling. And this was to Donald Driver because he just kept staring that motherfucker down and wouldn't look any other way. In a game ceiling, season-ending INT at Lambeau Field. 2 for 6, 12 yards, concluding in a game ceiling interception at Lambeau Field. In Aaron Rodgers' final 6 passes this year, he went 2 for 6 with 12 yards, concluding with a game ceiling interception at Lambeau Field. I'm not saying that this is all a script. I'm not saying this is made up. You say that. I'm not saying that. That's interesting. And the fact that Aaron Rodgers yesterday, today, tomorrow, whatever, because you're right, Morningwood, that was stupid of me to think he was at a press conference. I was surprised about that when I saw it. I was like, this dude got on a plane 36 minutes after his exit interview to go back to California, right? So anyhow, I was just thinking about how these, 2 stats kind of coincide, the narratives behind both Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, how both of their careers ended at Lambeau Field. And Chad, for somebody that wanted to be sort of the anti-Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers wanted to be the better version, the better quarterback, all this nonsense. He is ending up the exact same. It's almost like a parent-child relationship, right? Like you're almost destined, if you're Aaron Rodgers, to be Brett Favre, it seems. Because look at it from a statistical standpoint and just the way that he's handled this whole will I, won't I retirement. Come on, man. Just listen, there's a lot of ways to say stuff, and you can just tell somebody, hey, you know what? This has been a really tough season. I've had a rough game. You guys got to give me a couple of weeks to sort of process. I've got some mushrooms to do, some weed to smoke, some ayahuasca to drink. I got to go. I'll come back. I'll talk to you, right? Hit me up on my Twitter feed or something. And to do what he does, this is calculated. We all know that. He's saying something for a reason, and that's even though I didn't think Brett Favre was that smart at the time, the guy turned out to be kind of a genius because he can embezzle money. This is a calculated move by these guys. And for us to look at it any other way, that's our fallacy. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, or what is it? Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. This is something that we've seen before. We've seen this exact thing.
Those stats, that's very weird.
Isn't it?
That's very odd. Yeah.
Isn't it?
Not only for it'd be one thing if it was 2 for 6 for 14 yards, but if it's 2 for 6 and the interception, which is exactly, and obviously we don't know yet because it hasn't happened. We don't know if that was the last time we'll see Aaron Rodgers in a Packer uniform or not. We're just speculating at this point. Well, but if it ends up being that way, what you think is the way it's leaning, and I don't disagree with you. If it ends up that way, then yes, this is very Truman Show, weird, scripted kind of narrative kind of stuff that I think goes on to a certain degree. Now, I don't necessarily think that all of it is scripted line by line. I think it's probably more like a Christopher Guest movie. You have an outline.
Sure.
And you can kind of make up your lines as you go, but you know what the outline is. You know the direction it's going, and then you add your own little flair to it. But that is weird. And there's so many of those coincidences in sports. I mean, we could do a whole 3-hour show about it, honestly. And it's happened for a long time. And you could chalk to some of that up too. It's just synchronicities that happen in life, that happens in our own personal lives. I don't know, but that's weird. That's odd to me.
Well, things become phrases and sayings for a reason, right? So the phrase, the saying, the question, it's an eternal question that's asked. Does life imitate art, or does art imitate life? That's a question that we have asked ourselves as a race of beings for as long as we can recall. I'm not entirely sure who coined that phrase, and I don't know if in antiquity that's something that we have found out. So I personally don't think it's that scripted. However, it wouldn't be entirely difficult for a cast of 32 white men to get into a room together with another head, a figurehead like Roger Goodell, and come up with something of a script, right? Because the players, just like the actors, don't necessarily have to be all that involved in the writing of the overall framework, right? You look at Drunk Jim Irsay or the Davis family or the Moras, you know, you've got certain characters in ownership that could be looked at as Hollywood producers. And in that respect, when you think about what it takes to make a conspiracy happen, it takes either everybody in on it or very few people in on it with controlling mechanisms, right? Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, talked about that in his book Propaganda. Sometimes it's the unknown people involved that actually have the most to do with this, right? That actually have.
And it's just simple compartmentalization.
Exactly.
That's the way it's really done. You just compartmentalize things. You don't have to know the whole plan. You just have to know your part of the plan. And that's the way it kind of works. And when you've got billions of dollars involved, it's not that big of a stretch to think that there is a little bit of narrative building going on.
Coordination, would you say?
Yeah. And I think it's one of those things when coordination, that's a good way of putting it. When you see those things and when those things become suspect, you have to use some critical thinking and do your own thinking. If you think, hey, no, these guys are full of shit and there's no way, then that is what it is. But the reality is whatever it is, it is. And eventually it will come out if there is anything to that. I think that's just a matter of time.
Indeed. And yet I don't particularly think that it is a scripted event in that particular way, not like the WWE is specifically, but I do think that when you look at sports as a whole, this is a game and it's an entertainment game. And the owners of sports, and I go back to baseball and what they did to basically forgo free agency for nearly 100 years, exclude certain people, have rules in place that only favored the ownership group, and how all of that played out, right? Like the Yankees were a dynasty for a reason. There was a reason that they had all those things going for them. I guess what I'm saying is that it's not out of pocket to think that there is scripting in some way, shape, or form. I just think the unwitting actors are the athletes. I don't think that athletes go into it like football players or basketball players or any of those players. I don't think that they're a part of the actual script. And we look at Kyle Morningwood popping up here again. Good boy, man. We're over 40 and Morningwood just keeps on coming. If you want to go with the scripted theme, he says, is the Buffalo touchdown return to open a game last week scripted? That's exactly what I was talking about during that game. As a matter of fact, I was looking at a friend of mine who was sitting next to me at that time and said, well, Chad keeps saying that this shit's scripted. Keeps saying that this shit's scripted, and it would have been a perfect thing because it was here's the other thing. It was a 96-yard return. Both of those numbers divisible by 4.
So
Hamlin's number.
Have you ever bought a vehicle that up until that point you never really noticed that was around town? And as soon as you buy that vehicle, you notice, God, everybody's driving the same vehicle.
Yes.
Until you're aware of something, the possibility of something, you don't notice it. So if you open yourself up to the possibility, that doesn't mean that it's concrete. That doesn't mean that we can prove this. That doesn't mean it's necessarily factual. But you open up to that concept, and then you'll start noticing it more and more in sports. Because, ever since I opened myself up to it, which has been a long time ago, I remember I used to do this radio show in Vegas, and a guy used to call in and tell me all the time. He goes, dude, this is all scripted.
Is that what
it's totally? And I'm like, no. It was the same thing when I was a kid, when I was 12. My dad and my brother would yell at me. It's all fake. That wrestling's fake. No, it's not. I would argue with them. I would argue with them about it. It's just the reverse of that. But now that if you open yourself up to it, watch sports and notice some of these synchronicities, these weird, things that happen that you can't really explain, like, what you just said about Aaron Rodgers and Brett Favre's last game. That is weird. That doesn't scream scripted to me. That just seems weird.
That is a coinkydink. It just happens to be one of those that when you put it into a whole context, and I love that Jeff Schneider, Tax and Accounting, who says the WWE is real. I think that when you put one particular instance together with a whole, then it can be something.
Birds aren't, but the WWE is real.
Exactly. And
I think it's at least fun. It's an entertaining conversation We do know that there are refs that have been caught in, participating in fixing games. We know that's part of the game.
You betcha.
And of course, it's like anything. It's just like the drug game, right? You have to knock off a few of the kingpins to make it look like you're doing something. But does that mean that it's completely eradicated? Not necessarily.
No. And again, largely that whole thing's for show anyways, because the real deal behind the drug trade is so that they can prop up a business of about 1 billion employees around the world. So, I mean, that's
sure. But that's my point. My point is that you have to make it look like you're doing something, but are you really doing anything?
No. I do like to go to what Mark Forsberg mentioned here real quick. You pop this up here, going back to the Aaron Rodgers conversation. I just want to wrap this back around. I know that we're going all over the place. And Papadopoulos, John Papadopoulos, ESPN 105.5 is going to join us here, and we'll talk some serious sports. Mark was saying that he hopes Aaron does leave enough drama, enough calling out. Goodbye, I'm over him. Time to move on. Listen, because the statistics that we're talking about, Rodgers and Favre, 2 for 6 in their final 8 passes, 12 yards, both of them ending their season, what turned out to be the final game for Brett Favre. We don't know about Rodgers yet. I still largely believe that he comes back if everything works out right. When you look at those particular kind of statistics and then just, how it is, it's just a coincidence. But back to what we're talking about here with Rodgers, I just think that if you're a Packer fan, are you just not ready to see how much worse Jordan Love could be than Rodgers? Because how much better was Aaron Rodgers than Jordan Love this year? We don't know because we didn't see him. But Aaron Rodgers wasn't very good, guys. He just wasn't very good. And we can see certain stats. And Chad, you mentioned this the other day on a show, 26.1% of statistics are made up on the spot because there's damn lies in statistics. Statistics can be very, very misleading. Like when you see 18 eyeballs on this StreamYard thing, that's not how many people are watching this. There's hundreds of people watching it. They're just on 85 different platforms, right? Like it doesn't mean that that's the thing, but that's what you're seeing perhaps on StreamYard. Rodgers wasn't very good. I don't care about QBR and completion percentage and touchdown interception ratio. How much worse would Jordan Love be right now? And to Mark Forsberg's point, when you look at the drama, for football fans, it's different than for fans of life, right? If we're in Aaron Rodgers' inner circle, we want him to be reflective. We want him to be introspective. We want him to be soul searching. This is a 39-year-old man. He's younger than I am, for Christ's sakes, and far younger than you all. So this is still a young person, and he's got plenty of opportunity to explore his life, and God bless him for doing so. But for football fans, yeah, it becomes enough. And at what point, to the cost of the team and the fan base in general, do you not just have to say enough's enough, right? Like, I mean, I realize the guy's been a staple in everything. Dude, Michael Jordan went and played for the Wizards. There's only been a couple of guys in the history of sport who have ended their career with the teams, and that's why we put them on Mount Rushmore of sports, right? Like Kobe and Duncan and Bird, and even Peyton Manning gets hoisted up there because his career with Denver, I mean, that last year wasn't great. They won a Super Bowl, was pretty fucking awesome. I mean, that guy set some major records and went to 2 Super Bowls while he was there. There aren't many people that get to finish their careers like that. And because of that, I think that we hold on to this Aaron Rodgers thing just a little too much. And I know that Jeff Schneider Tax and Accounting is like, dude, he's a huge fan. I liked his football play too. For a long time, he was a real good football player, dude. At this point, what's the overall benefit, him versus somebody else? He's not that much better. And by the way, he doesn't give the Packers the best chance to win a Super Bowl. They're not in the playoffs. Okay? Did anybody forget that? They're not there.
Right. Now, well, how much do we blame his thumb, though? I mean,
because it's up his ass? I don't know.
Well, I'm just saying, he did have a thumb injury. Obviously, that was bothering him to a certain degree. Does he recoup over, the off season, come back and have a different, view of everything? And maybe then he decides in his head, okay, this is my final year. I'm going for it. I'm comfortable now with the guys that they've surrounded me with. Obviously, that was the other issue that you specifically had, and I had as well, of his relationship with his young wide receivers and how he didn't really wrap his arms around them initially, right? He kind of was standoffish at the beginning. And then later in the season kind of understood, okay, hey, these guys are actually, especially Christian Watson, look how well he did. I mean, does he maybe stand back after this season and look at that and go, wow, maybe I handled this all wrong. And, I'm going to get my head straight. My thumb's going to be, better. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to try to win a Super Bowl. It's a possibility.
Well, Jeff Schneider Tax and Accounting, he thinks so. He can't wait for AR12 to come back next year, win MVP again. I don't know if that is just tongue in cheek. I doubt it, though, because Jeff's office is there's a lot of great Packer memorabilia in there. By the way, if you need your taxes done, Jeff Schneider is the man. I don't know if he's even taking new clients. So, Jeff, I probably shouldn't even say that, but you're a great accountant, and I'd love to be able to give you some shine there. Look, I think that Aaron Rodgers is a great Hall of Fame, first ballot, uniquely talented, record-setting interception to touchdown ratio kind of guy. He really is. But 2 years ago, and I said this when I was still doing the old program, when he was off with Shailene Wooley, chasing waterfalls, to bite from TLC directly. Don't go chasing waterfalls. Stick to the rivers and the streams that you're used to.
Right.
In Wisconsin. And I just don't think that his heart is here anymore. I really don't. I hate to say that, guys. That's just my personal opinion. I don't think that his heart is still there.
I love this from Joe. His thumbs seemed to get worse when they were losing. Yeah, interesting how interesting how that works. I remember that was funny because we talked about it after the game in Detroit, how the sideline reporter, I remember who it was talking about how when they were getting beat, how all of a sudden, that thumb's really bothering Aaron. He doesn't seem like he's his normal self. He obviously hurt that in the game against Minnesota, and right then I knew that the game was over with. But that's interesting that you say that, Joe. I noticed the same thing. Isn't that interesting how that works?
Yeah, and don't think that for 1 second, had the Packers not won one more of those games, if they hadn't have gone on that 4-game winning streak, that thumb was going to be a whole lot worse. And then the team was going to start to say, well, we got to shut you down, Rodgers, because that thumb is just a whole lot worse than we thought it was. And he would have said, yeah, that's right. We were statistically eliminated. It is a whole lot worse than I thought. When you're winning, everything feels better. The excuses didn't come out. We talked about that prior to the thumb injury becoming known. We were just waiting for that to become the de facto excuse. And listen, I know that Wood's saying, if you want to put heat on Rodgers, it's too big of a text to put up. He says, if you want to put heat on Rodgers, think about this. Green Bay was collectively dropping passes. Sure, fine. We all saw what we saw. Listen, this is what it is. It's like walking into your fucking bedroom and seeing your wife cheating on you with your best friend. And you telling yourself, nah, they're just playing naked twister. That's not really what's happening. Okay, fine. Sure. And while that may have started out to be the case, and maybe that's what they were doing, right?
Right.
Well, it looks like, he slipped and fell right into her. So it just, whatever, guys. We see what we see. We saw what we saw. The Packers are not in the postseason. Okay. Jared Goff looked like the much better quarterback against Green Bay than Aaron Rodgers looked against the Lions. And I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but does anybody truly think that the teams that Green Bay beat on that winning streak were teams that wouldn't have gotten beat anyways? The Rams with Baker Mayfield? What are we talking about here? What are we talking about here? These are teams that were so horrible that they should have gotten beat. The fact that they did win Green Bay was a bit of a surprise to me because I didn't know if they had the temerity to stick through a whole game. Because again, Robert Saleh talked about it after the Jets beat them, in the locker room. And Joe DeGuano mentioned this to us, our Green and Gold Insider, on Monday. Go out there and punch them in the mouth because they can't take it. Which, by the way, now Matt's brother's been fired, and we mentioned that yesterday. Who knows? Maybe he finds a soft landing spot in Green Bay. They'll have really good hair, and it'll look really cool, and they'll have great press conferences. And
they're well groomed. Both of them very well groomed.
It's going to be so. Listen, it's going to be so cool to see all of these guys just cool. And, when things go wrong, we'll get the steely side eyes. And Lisa Salters will give us a sterling report from the sideline about how at 3-9, the Packers are still not mathematically eliminated, but they're going to stick with it because they believe in Rodgers. And even though he's completing 52% of his passes, he's still a good quarterback. At what point does he have to be Damar Hamlin before you guys start to say, all right, enough's enough? Okay.
Right.
That's going to be the case. I feel like it's going to be like, oh God, it's like pick up his arm. Yep. Okay. Well, I guess he's done. When we come back, this is going to be a fun conversation. I had a fun one with him last night on ESPN 105.5. You know him, you love him. His name is John Papadapolus from the Sports Lead. We'll be talking to him on the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center Studios, powered by the Recovery Room. Preferred Insurance is the official auto, home, business, flood, and life insurance agency of the Sports Carnival, serving folks in La Crosse and surrounding areas with licenses in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa. As an independent insurance agency, Preferred Insurance is free to find the very best insurance for you, your family, or your business needs. Call my friends at Preferred Insurance today and set up a free consultation. Remember, working with an independent agency means Preferred Insurance works for you, with you, to find the best solutions at the best prices.
The official mortgage team of the Sports Carnival is the Midwest mortgage team of Land Home Financial, my good buddies Mike Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi. Listen, we all know the mortgage industry is in a bit of an upheaval right now, and that's why it's more important than ever to go to a couple of guys that you can trust, a local operation right here in La Crosse. That is the Midwest mortgage team. Again, Michael Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi of Land Home Financial. Don't make a mistake with your mortgage needs. Go to the official mortgage provider of the Sports Carnival, the Midwest mortgage team, Mike Garcia and Todd Vercruzzi.
Back to the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios. You know the trouble with being punctual? Nobody's ever there to appreciate it. You ever notice that? Now here's your host, Dave Carney.
Yeah, that's why I always make sure to show up 2.5 minutes late, because at that point, you're not that late, and people sometimes don't know if their watch is wrong, but you know you got them waiting for you. Speaking of waiting for us, he's been good enough to hang around in the Sports Carnival carousel. John Papadapolus from ESPN 105.5's The Sports Lead is joining us here this morning on the Sports Carnival. John P., great to have you on the program, man. Fun show last night. Let me ask you this. As we go into the offseason for the Packers, right? Super wildcard weekend still to come. But as we go into the offseason for the Packers, what are the listeners of ESPN 105.5 out there in Sparta, 1290 AM, by the way, and 102.1 FM in certain areas? What are the listeners of your radio station thinking and feeling about Aaron Rodgers coming back? Do they want him back, or do they just think he's coming back?
Well, I'm surprised how many people don't want him back. Over time, I really think since that period when he left, didn't leave, but said he might want to go a year and a half ago, a lot of people have not come back since then. I think he offended a lot of people. I'm still shocked. I thought that would fade, but I think it's close to 50-50 right now in terms of let's get Jordan Love in there. Let's start from scratch. A big one I always hear is let's get somebody in there who will run LaFleur's offense, because we saw LaFleur's offense a couple years ago when Rodgers actually ran it, and it's great. It's the classic Shanahan offense. With a lot of motion, a lot of running. One play sets up another play, a lot of stuff around the line of scrimmage. But clearly there's been sort of a cold war, I think, between Rodgers and LaFleur in terms of play calling. I think they get along. I think they like each other. This isn't, a situation where I think there's a major issue, but I think there's a little bit of a cold war of one offense versus another. And, I was talking, Andy Herman was on my show yesterday from, PackerReport.com and his podcast as well, Pack-A-Day. And Andy said something that I think, simply made a lot of sense, that if LaFleur gives Rodgers an inch, all right, we'll let you do your thing here or there, then he takes more and more and more. And when the team loses or is struggling, Rodgers is going to want to run his offense and kind of knee-jerk as opposed to settle into LaFleur's offense more. I just think that tug-of-war has been a problem. So a lot of my listeners – a lot of the tweets we get and the calls we get, get rid of him. Let's find somebody who, even if Jordan Love's not as good, he'll at least run the offense and there'll be an identity.
I think largely that is the same in many respects as I have heard over the last couple of years. As you've mentioned, this has been going on, the saga, if you will. We used to call it the Aaron Rodgers saga. The saga over the last couple of years, that's largely what I've been, hearing. This year, though, in particular, John, because the last two seasons prior to this year, he was an MVP. Okay, won back-to-back MVPs. He collected 4 now in his career, and congratulations, because it's been a storied NFL career. But this year particularly, there just hasn't been the proof in the pudding that he is markedly better than another quarterback, specifically the backup in Jordan Love, who we don't know how good he is because we haven't seen him. So we exist in this vacuum in this particular way. My point being, when you start to see the declining return on what Rodgers' play was, it does give Packer fans, even those that maybe had previously been reticent to say, let's push him away, it does give Packer fans a reason to pause and listen. we keep going back to this, guys and gals, and we're checking in here on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We keep going back to this. The Packers are not in the playoffs. So you cannot tell me that Aaron Rodgers gives the Packers a better chance to win a Super Bowl because, John, that is just not true. They are not in the playoffs this year. So you can't prove to me that he gives you a better shot than Jordan Love. Now, whether the team goes with him or not, that's a different question. In your estimation, saying what we just did, do you think that Rodgers comes back?
I do. I think he'll be back. 50 million or 60 million is a lot to turn down. And don't forget, if the Packers in some way, shape, or form get rid of him, they're going to take a big salary cap hit in terms of the dead cap money. So they both have a lot of motivation to get back. It's almost a situation where they sort of need each other for at least one more year in a lot of ways. I think I'm in a little bit of a different camp than you guys on this and a lot of other people. I would give him another shot, even if those things weren't the issue. Here's my argument for Aaron Rodgers right now, and I get it. He's looked bad. I heard you guys talking about the thumb injury. The more they lost, suddenly the worse the thumb injury seemed to be. And there might be something to that for sure. But I will say this. I'm not as high on Jordan Love as a lot of people. I think he had a great game, but don't forget, they didn't blitz him that game.
Yeah.
We've seen Jordan Love when he gets blitzed. And these defensive coordinators figure out quarterbacks relatively quickly. There's a lot of hot quarterbacks for a game or two or three, and then they're figured out. And you don't want to get stuck with that. I think the Jordan Love we saw, many practices, preseason games, the couple of games he played last year might be a little bit closer to the guy you're going to end up with. So, A, I'm not as high on Jordan Love. I could end up being wrong on that. And B, I think Jordan Love's stock is as high as it's going to get right now after the way he played, a month or two ago. Maybe you get something back for him. But here's my case for Aaron Rodgers. Number one, it may sound silly, but he's not that old by quarterback standards. He just turned 39. And let's not forget, Brett Favre had a year, I think it was 3 years before he left the Packers. He threw 29 interceptions, and he was awful. They went 4-12 that year. And then he was almost as bad the next year. The arm strength was there. He still kind of looked like Favre, but he wasn't connecting. And then the 2 years after the 29 interception year, he had one of his better seasons with the Packers. They went to the NFC Championship game. That was the snow game. And he didn't play well in that game, but he had a great year. And then a couple of years after that, he almost won the MVP with the Vikings. So I think a lot of these slightly older quarterbacks are going to have some bad years later. But I think if Rodgers is more confident, more comfortable in what he's got, I think we can see at least close to what we've seen him at his best. He won the MVP of the league last year, and he won the MVP of the year after that. And I don't see a decline in arm strength. I definitely see a decline in terms of his recognition of, guys are open. He's not hitting guys. But the arm strength seems to be there. The swagger pretty much is still there. It doesn't feel like Peyton Manning that last year. Remember when he couldn't throw anymore? Drew Brees the last year, he couldn't throw at all. It was just like gone. Eli Manning was like that. Roethlisberger was like that last year. That's not what I see out of Rodgers. I see a guy who's not confident in his head coach and refuses to play the offense at times. I see a guy who's not confident in his receivers, almost like a petulant child. That's like, well, if I'm not going to have Devontae, then I'm going home. That's what it's felt like all year, complaining about the other players, in particular the receivers. Listen, you have a great run game. In his defense, the offensive line was horrific the first month and a half of the season, but that seems to be a lot better. So I'd give it one more good shot with him. And I'll tell you what, I think if he feels better about the O-line, which I think he will, I think year 2 with Christian Watson, year 2 with Romeo Doubs, he's going to feel a lot better about that situation. If they can figure out the defense, he might feel a lot better about the situation and be a better quarterback. I think the guy acts like a child sometimes. That part I agree with. And he didn't get his way when Devontae left. And I think he had a sour attitude about it. And when the rookies weren't picking it up immediately, he didn't have the patience to understand that they're doing what every rookie receiver does. They're struggling. So I definitely think he's to blame in a lot of ways. But I think the skill set's still there. I think if he can trust LaFleur's offense and feel a little bit better about these young receivers in year 2, which I think he will. Plus, the O-line is going to be better. Zach Tom is a real guy now. Bakhtiari could be back. We'll see what happens there. But if he is, you're in great shape. You've got Elton Jenkins signed to a long-term extension. He looks great again. So I'm more of a Rodgers guy here. I do understand the idea of, it's time to move on. Let's get somebody else. Let's give Jordan Love a shot. But he's not 42 or 43, or he's not looking like Eli Manning looked at the end, or Drew Brees looked the last year, or like I said, Peyton Manning. The year they won the Super Bowl, and they had to, throw up smoke and mirrors to score because he couldn't throw anymore. I don't see that at all out of Rodgers.
Well, Brock Osweiler made his entire career off of that season. They actually were doing pretty good, Brock Osweiler, and that's why he ended up getting that contract from the Texans.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah, I mean, that was fantastic. So, John, and all of that said, because I don't think that Rodgers' talent is gone by any measure. I just think that what you hit on, petulant child, refusal to accept coaching, there are what we call intangibles in sports. And if you've got a great offensive line, I can look back at the Dallas Cowboys with Dak Prescott's a 4th-round draft pick. He's not that good of a quarterback, but when you give him a Hall of Fame offensive line, a good running game, guess what? It looks pretty good. Yeah. So at what point do you start to make that contemplation as an organization? I think for Green Bay, they're particularly hamstrung. They don't have an owner. They've got Mark Murphy, and they've got a collective of people. They don't have a Jerry Jones. They don't have a Jim Mora. They don't have these guys that can make these unilateral decisions. My overall point is just this. If that is what Rodgers is, a talented but more crucial player who won't listen to coaching, at what point do you not think that that is detrimental? And then further, at $60 million in salary, you pay that guy to be better than the offensive line, right? You're not paying him to be the other guy from another team that just happens to only win when there's a good offensive line. If you're paying me that kind of coin, I'm supposed to be better than all of those things. That's why
I would say this
market money.
What I would say is, you can't have a guy whose attitude is out the door. My hope would be, and maybe I'm being more hopeful than anything on this, is that the guy you saw 2 years ago who did play the offense and had the perfect attitude somehow comes back. Even the guy last year that won the MVP, he won 2 MVPs in a row, and he just turned 39. So I would take my chances on getting 75% of that back this upcoming year and then see what happens afterwards. And I guess the other big part of this for me is I'm just not a Jordan Love guy. I may be dead wrong on this.
I'm not making any argument for him either. That's
but I feel like, I don't want to make the Jerry Krause analogy, but I'd hate to let him go a year or two early, have him go somewhere else and be great and say, oh, we could have had that. I think the ability of Aaron Rodgers is still there when I watch him throw, even when I watch him move. I mean, he doesn't move quite like he used to, but if you can get 75, 80% of what they got out of him the last 2 years, I think that's pretty realistic. Now it's going to depend on him and his attitude. And by the way, it also depends on Matt LaFleur. At some point, he's got to step up and say, I'm the coach. We've played this dance for multiple years now, where I think, LaFleur gives Rodgers an inch and Rodgers takes a mile and just takes over the offense. We all know, the three of us, and I think everybody watching knows what the LaFleur offense is supposed to look like now, with all the motion and the running, the emphasis on the run game and the short pass. I mean, we know the rhythm of that offense well. We saw it run to perfection 2 years ago, and to a degree, we saw it last year. If Rodgers is willing to just trust, Christian Watson is going to be in the right spot. Romeo Doubs has got to figure it out. Maybe they bring in another piece. Maybe the running backs get more involved in the pass game, and for God's sakes, maybe the defense can play a little bit better. That's the part nobody talks about. Maybe he falls back in line. Maybe you get 2 more years out of Rodgers where he's really playing at a high level. Now, at 42, 43 years old, that's when I start to say it's just going to start going. There's only one Tom Brady. But Brett Favre almost won an MVP at 40 after throwing a lot of interceptions and being a wreck for a couple of years before that. Tom Brady, had won 2 Super Bowls from age 40. And even Drew Brees, who I said started to fade, I think he won the passing title at 40 years old. And then the next couple of years, it started to go down. I think there's more gas in the tank, and I'm hopeful that his attitude will change a little bit at least, and maybe they can fix the defense and the whole thing comes together.
But is there more gas in the tank in general, or is there enough gas in the tank to play with Green Bay? So in other words, would it be beneficial for Aaron to go to another team? A lot of times that happens where a guy maybe is just done with that team. And sometimes with that last press conference that we were just talking about earlier, it feels that way, that Rodgers feels like he's done there.
And that's a great point. You know, a lot of times guys do go to another team and they get that spark, but with Rodgers, and I think this is what you're getting at here, is his attitude going to change in Green Bay? If he's still got that petulant child thing going of, no, I'm not going to do it LaFleur's way, well, then you're better off without him, you know? And, you know, maybe the grass is greener on the other side for him, but I guess I hold out hope that he's able to somehow do what he did. He did it 2 years ago, you know, so I guess that's maybe why I'm hanging on a little bit. And last year he won the MVP. He had 2 MVP seasons. So I think it can be done. And I'll put it this way, guys. Let's say you bring him back and it's the same nonsense where, you know, there's that tug of war between the offenses and there never really seems to be an identity. I don't think that will be worse than Jordan Love being the starting quarterback. And that's how I feel. Now, a lot of people look at Love and say, no, he's the real deal now, and he's going to run the offense, which I think he would. I just don't know if Jordan Love is a good enough quarterback. And maybe, like I said, I'll be wrong. To me, though, even if Rodgers does what he did this year, I don't think it's going to be that much worse than Jordan Love. So I would take the shot that you get 2021 or 2020 Aaron Rodgers back again, and these young receivers, we saw what Watson did the second half. Maybe Romeo Doubs figures it out. Maybe they add one more piece. So I'm hopeful they can get that guy back again. And I'll tell you, I'd be worried if all of a sudden they said, all right, we're going to move on without him, give Jordan Love the ball. You get to, you know, middle of November and you got 2 wins. Okay, now you don't have Aaron Rodgers anymore, and you might have 3 or 4 years of that if that ends up being the case.
Well, listen, Packer fans, you're going to have to brace yourself for this. Aaron Rodgers is not going to play forever. No matter what happens, he will not play forever. And at some point, the Packers have to move on. And, John, I think that a lot of Packer fans are kind of with you on this one, but you're kind of wishing in one hand and you-know-whatting in the other, and you'll just
see a little bit.
Which one fills up the fastest. You know, I don't know. The Packers would have a lot of money to eat. So.
I'd feel differently if the other quarterback I had more confidence in.
Sure.
You know, sometimes you can just feel it with the guy. That would change my mind a lot. Because if that's the case, I would have traded him probably a year ago and gotten 2 or 3 first rounders, which they probably could have gotten for him at that point. So to me, it's partly a Jordan Love thing as well.
Well, I don't think that anybody really is advocating, I guess, you know, super strongly that Jordan Love's better than Rodgers. But, John, we'll just, you know, have to all as Packer fans sort of buckle in, strap in as the Aaron Rodgers saga continues. And listen, for what it's worth, I hope he comes back and can be the guy he was not 2 years ago. I want him to be the guy that he was now 13 years ago when the Packers won a Super Bowl in 2010. Thank you so much for coming on. Great to have you. And look forward to being back on ESPN 105.5, the Sports Lead next Thursday with John Papadapolus. Tune in every day from 3 to 6. John is there giving you all the goods here in the Cooley region. John, again, thank you for coming on. We'll talk to you soon, buddy.
All right, guys. Thank you. Have a good one.
Now more than ever, if you're looking to buy or sell your first home or perhaps an investment property, you need a full-time dedicated real estate agent who is up to date on all the latest trends and analysis and is ready to give you the kind of service that you deserve. That's why the official real estate agent and the official real estate partner of the Sports Carnival is Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate. Whether you're looking to buy or sell your first home or perhaps you are a seasoned investor, call the official real estate agent partner of the Sports Carnival, Kyle Cable of One Trust Real Estate.
Do you have a wedding, anniversary party, or bat mitzvah coming up in your life? Then you need Hey Duda DJ Services, featuring Neil Duda,
the Midwest Eminem.
No doubt about it, I'm hammered, and that's every day. Brains are cloudy, dog.
Dropping sick beats while you enjoy your treats. No party is too big or too small. Quinceañeras, graduations, ice cream socials,
or cocktail parties.
Whatever the celebration, Hey Duda is rocking the foundation.
Here we go again, back with all our friends. Here comes the pain.
Neil Duda.
Yes, Neil Duda. Back to the action live from the Trauma Center Studios. This is the Sports Carnival, brought to you by beer. It's not just breakfast anymore. Now here's your host, Dave Carney.
Great bit, by the way. Beer for breakfast. What a great bit. We'll have to see if we can't revive that when we get the Trauma Center Studios relocated to downtown La Crosse, Wisconsin. Chad, I can't believe it's going to be less than Oh my God, it's going to be a week. I'll be moving next Friday. Isn't that something?
That's awesome. Good for
Oh
you.
my goodness, thank you.
Congratulations.
I know. It's still like looking around here thinking, geez, we got to disassemble so much more stuff.
Mike
Anyways,
Myers is checking in saying Happy National Blame Someone Else Day. I love it.
I like that because I was gonna blame Mike for not giving me enough boxes. No, I'm kidding. Mike, you brought me so many great boxes, which by the way, Chad, I hadn't shouted out here yet. Mike Byers was kind enough to deliver to me over at the current Trauma Center studio, a whole bunch of boxes that I was able to use and still using. Mike, thank you very much. I like this from Joe V. I saw this earlier.
This is great.
Best news yesterday was John Fogerty got ownership of that CCR catalog. So his brother, John Fogerty's brother, had owned that catalog, and really the CCR collective, when he broke off of that, there were years, I don't know what it was, 20 years that Fogerty wouldn't even play a CCR song in concert. Now, when we saw John Fogerty at the Venetian, right? We were there at the Venetian. That was one of the best concerts I've ever seen. And he did all CCR. I mean, he did some of his own songs, obviously. He's got a catalog, in and to himself. But he did a lot of CCR songs. That's really good news. I love that. Chad, let me just ask you. You've seen a lot of concerts, so have I. And I know that Fogerty was already older when we saw him, but for being his age and for the amount of energy, the amount of instruments that he played, where would you rank that concert for yourself as far as the all-time pantheon?
Oh, I don't know. It's probably in the top 5. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't the greatest I've ever gone to.
Agreed.
I saw 93, I want to say, I think it was 92, 93, Van Halen with Sammy Hagar. And at that point, I was a Diamond Dave fan. I was kind of an anti-Sammy and Van Halen.
Yeah.
And that completely changed my mind. I went and bought all of the Van Halen, Sammy Hagar albums. It was an awesome concert. He did this. He climbed to the top of like the lights, and he was doing Where Eagles Fly. It was just, I was just like, man, that was a great concert. So to me, that's probably up there. I've been to a Steve Miller concert that was amazing because you can sing along with every single song. But I mean, sure, Fogerty was great, no doubt about it, especially at his age and what, just be basically himself there and being able to be able to put on that kind of show and entertain people. It was impressive.
Yeah, I think that Fogerty's probably, oh boy, it's in my top 10 because I've been to hundreds, right? Like I was a roadie in a band, so I got to see like more concerts than probably many of the people that are watching us or listening to us. But at the same time, I'd put Fogerty in the top 10. The best concert I ever saw, and I've had a lot of time to reflect on this, was 1998, the Hollywood Bowl. It was Jimmy Page, Robert Plant. It was a 4-piece band. It was when they came back to do like the Led Zeppelin actual show. And like I said, it was at the Hollywood Bowl. And I'll never forget Robert Plant saying, I never thought I wanted to ever sing like this again, or I could sing like this again. And then he just starts going into a whole lot of love. It was a 3-hour concert. The 15-minute guitar break that Jimmy Page gave Robert Plant was the thing that actually reinforced in my mind, and I was 18 years old at this time, that I could never be a professional guitarist. Because I watched that man play that, and I was like, oh, that's the thing. It was unbelievable. And the outdoor setting, I was with my father, who had seen Led Zeppelin on their initial tour to the United States back in 1969, right? He saw them when they initially came to the States. We did this together. Oh, man, weed was burning in the air. It was outside. I toked up in front of my dad, and he was like, I guess we're at the Hollywood Bowl. So I felt pretty special about that. And then I've seen a lot of Dylan concerts, but Fogerty, you, me, and Mark. Mark, help me with his last name. What was his last name? Mark something from the Jerry's Nugget. We all saw that concert together.
Yeah, Mark something. I think that's exactly who that was.
Mark something. Good guy, that Mark something.
Brad from Green Bay, I wanted to get to this.
This is good.
When you get to talk, 49ers talk, how is McCaffrey holding up? He's actually holding up pretty well.
He is. Interesting, huh?
I think your poll question about what is the best NFC matchup, obviously I'm a bit biased this weekend. I'm going to take the 49ers Seattle. I don't necessarily think that's the best matchup, but that's the game I'm the most interested in. Probably the best matchup, and what I think is going to be an upset is probably the Giants-Vikings. And no offense to any Viking fans out there, because my dad's a Viking fan, and I am polling for the Vikings. But after what I've seen the last couple of weeks, I'm thinking that Brian Daboll and the Giants are going to put together a great scheme, and they're going to end up with an upset here.
I said the same thing last night on John Papadopoulos' show, the ESPN 105.5, the Sports Lead. I said the same thing. I think New York plus 3 points right now is actually a great bet because, look, the Giants at 9-8 are a team that has not just overperformed expectations, but blown through expectations. Brian Daboll, you want to talk about a bad offensive line? The Giants' offensive line, guys and gals, was rated like the second worst offensive line in the NFL. The second worst offensive line in the NFL. And Daniel Jones this year threw for 3,208 yards, 15 touchdowns, 5 picks, and ran for 708 and 7 scores.
Wow.
Okay, right. Saquon Barkley ran for over 1,000 yards again. Now, he started off the season really hot and sort of cooled as he went through the season, which running backs tend to do. But I agree with you. I think the one thing that will be in Minnesota's favor, I mean, the one big thing is that home field advantage. The Skull Viking fans are going to be crazy. But here's what Minnesota has to deal with. Kirk fucking Cousins. That guy can literally fuck up a wet dream. Kirk Cousins and all his bullshit, like when it comes to big games, is just what Viking fans don't want to see the most. Viking fans, the best part about this game is, okay, I'm going to see exactly when this kicks off. So 3:30, it's going to kick off on Sunday. Well, that's actually, the best part about it is it's not Sunday Night Football, okay? Because if you gave Kirk Cousins Sunday Night Football, he's guaranteed to lose. The guy just doesn't win in big spots. That's just what we have seen from Cousins, and I don't remember how many games he had gone without winning a primetime game prior to last season when he finally actually got like a Thursday Night Football game win or something like that. The guy just doesn't win in big spots, and what we saw against Green Bay, and we didn't see him against the Chicago Bears, but what we saw against Green Bay, ooh, That's rough. I mean, that was rough stuff. So if Brian Daboll's defense, which is actually a lot better than you might expect, if Brian Daboll's defense, because that's led by Wink Martindale, which has just been a good one. Packer fans, we should remember, because the Giants undressed the Packers. That's going to be a tough task for Minnesota. I like that as just a general bet. And by the way, betus.com. We haven't talked about this. Go to betus.com. Use the promo code Carnival. Get 125% free play money. It's going to go right into your sportsbook wallet, and you'll be able to use that free play money on any of the games that are coming up this weekend. Matt from the recovery room says, rooting for Tampa, hopefully a playoff bonus for his brother. That's right. His brother is a lead scout. I can't remember, Matty, if he's a lead scout, but he's part of the scouting team. One of the Ellens.
Oh, do they get bonuses too if they get playoff money? Oh, okay. Well, because no offense, Matt, I'm rooting against Tampa Bay because I don't like Tom Brady.
Well, that's right. You don't like Tom Brady.
I don't like Tom Brady. So, but I have a feeling they're going to win.
I do too. I think that Tampa
I do like
Bay,
Jacksonville, though. That's my other upset.
Well, listen, let me do this first. Let me give the poll question again one more time. Which NFC Super Wildcard game are you looking forward to the most? Minnesota, New York here on our Twitter poll at the Sports Carney leading with 50%. The other two games, Tampa, Dallas, and San Francisco, Seattle, 25% apiece. Over on our Facebook group page, Chad, we got 38% for Dallas, Tampa, 28% for New York, Minnesota, Seattle, San Francisco getting 17%. And Matty Euler not really picking up what we were putting down. Matty Ice ended up putting an AFC game on there too, Jacksonville and the Chargers, but that's neither here nor there. I think that Dallas, Tampa Bay, this is another game that I talked about with John Papadapolus last night on the Sports Lead. I think Dallas, Tampa Bay is a real good spot for Tampa, plus 2.5. What this really shows you is that the sports sharps are figuring that the Dallas defense is going to be able to rush Brady and get him off of his game. If Brady plays the way he's been playing over the last couple of weeks, and he didn't play last week, Tampa Bay is going to win this by a lot. The Bengals minus 9.5 now, Chad. This game opened up as a 6.5 point spread. News, of course, broke that Lamar Jackson was out, was not going to be playing in this game, and that Tyler Huntley was actually not even practicing the other day. He did resume throwing, but they're now a 9.5 point favorite, 74% of the coin coming in on the Bengals here. I wouldn't really touch this one. I would lay it if I had to on a parlay, maybe use a 6-point teaser on that, get that down to a field goal or something like that. Baltimore and Cincinnati are playing again, and this is a division rival, so they're gonna know each other, and this is going to be a tough John Harbaugh defense here. Let's see what else. Minnesota, again, -3. We talked about that. I love the Giants here. I think you're right on that. The Bills, they're 13.5 point favorites now that we know that Tua is out and may never play football again. I mean, let's just be fair. Tua might not play football again.
Yeah.
The Bills -13.5. That's a lot. That's a lot of coin to lay. Dude, they're playing this third string guy, Sky, whatever. His name eludes me right now. It doesn't matter because they're going to lose.
Yeah, Skylar Thompson.
That's the guy. What do you think about laying that money, though? 13.5. I don't know if I would do it necessarily, but I could be convinced.
I don't like that. The two games, again, I like the Giants in an upset, and I like Jacksonville in an upset. And I can't believe I'm saying this out loud, but this is how much I hate Tom Brady. I'm just tired of seeing the guy's face.
Sure.
I'm actually pulling for Dallas this weekend.
Oh my God,
a 49er fan pulling for the Dallas Cowboys. That's not right.
Well, listen,
Not right.
if you're a 49er fan, you'd probably rather see Dak Prescott and that really horrible coaching staff of Dallas than you would Tom Brady, because that maybe is what's creeping up in the back of your mind is like,
Yeah,
well, I
true.
don't want to see Tom Brady if he actually plays against my team.
True.
Again, make your bets legally here in the state of Wisconsin and everywhere you might be picking us up from here on the Sports Carnival, broadcasting live from the Trauma Center studios at betus.com. Enter promo code CARNIVAL and get 125% free play money. Mike Byers will send us out of here again with that. If you didn't see it before, National Blame Someone Else Day. I like that. If you're having problems in your life, it's not your fault, it's somebody else's. And that's just a good way to feel going into a weekend. That way you can just wash all of this down with a nice beverage over at the recovery room. I can't wait to see you guys later. Chad, have a great weekend. And boys and girls, be safe. Keep it under 100.